The bomb exploded inside NATO because Peter Hegseth arrived in Brussels this Thursday, June 18, 2026. He told the European allies directly that the alliance is now just a paper tiger, a one-way street and a burden carried for decades by the wallet, the soldiers, and the patience of the United States. The demand reached NATO defense ministers at the alliance headquarters in Belgium. And it came at the same time that Europe is also rushing to tighten rules against illegal immigration. While the market reacts to Trump's deal with Iran and brings down oil to around $74 per American barrel, the scene exposed a bigger change. Trump is forcing allies to stop using the United States as a free shield. Hegseth spoke alongside Secretary General Mark Rutte and delivered the message that many European leaders did not want to hear. NATO can't just be a committee, a meeting, a little flag, and a diplomatic note. It needs to be real strength. What did Hegseth reveal inside NATO? Why was Europe backed into a corner? How did Trump turn military pressure, immigration, and oil into a single show of power? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. Hegseth stated that the allies need to take responsibility for defending their own republic and announced that the United States will review its military presence in Europe. The statement was made at the NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels and put a simple demand at the center of the discussion. Those who want protection need to pay the bill, prepare troops, and uphold commitments. He said that some nations will fail this assessment and others will pass easily. This means that Washington will look at bases, troops, contributions, military access, support in crises, and the real willingness of Europeans to act when Western security is at stake. The phrase that hurt the most was the comparison of NATO to a paper tiger. Hegseth said that for too long the alliance has been a one-way street. The United States brings military strength, technology, intelligence, aircraft carriers, fighter jets, nuclear deterrence, and a presence on European soil. While part of Europe prefers to spend less, complain more, and wait for Washington to solve things. Trump started demanding payment for this since his first term in the White House, and now the American government has moved from public complaints to a practical review of the military structure. The pressure didn't come out of nowhere. The war involving Iran left a wound inside NATO. According to international news, Hegseth criticized allies who did not support the United States during tough moments of the crisis, including when Washington needed access, bases, airspace, and clear support. For the Trump administration, there is no serious alliance when one side asks for protection in times of fear, but runs away when it's time to share the risk. That's when the expression paper tiger gained traction. On paper, NATO looks gigantic. At decision time, Hegseth called out those who prefer to pose for photos and leave the military burden to the Americans. Him. Rutte tried to maintain the image of unity, but the meeting showed that unity now comes at a price. NATO is entering a phase where empty promises are no longer enough. Hegseth's speech talked about a NATO 3.0 with real defense, hard power, and less dependence on the United States. This directly affects European governments that for years have treated Washington as automatic military insurance. Trump's logic is different. An ally who wants protection needs to be an ally in practice, not just in official statements. The demand for military spending also matters. Trump had already been pressuring NATO to raise defense investments to 5% of GDP by 2035, including core defense and security-related spending. This point changed the conversation within the alliance. Previously, many European governments considered the increase in spending to be an American exaggeration. Now, with war in the Middle East, Russia pressuring Eastern Europe, drones hitting Moscow, and an energy threat in the Strait of Hormuz, the bill has come due. Europe realizes that relying on another army can become much more expensive when crisis comes knocking at the door. The American government has also shown that the review of troops is not just a rhetorical threat. Hegseth mentioned the reduction of forces compared to the peak after 2022 and talked about bringing the American presence back to previous levels. This means that Washington may reposition part of its forces, reduce its contribution in certain structures, and demand more from its allies. For the Europeans, the warning is serious because many important capabilities still depend on the United States. Aircraft, drones, intelligence, logistics, air defense, and integrated command. Hegseth's statement had even more impact because it came along with a political shift in Europe itself. The European Union moved forward with a new rule to speed up the return of people who have no legal right to stay in the bloc. The package allows mechanisms such as return centers outside the European Union, cooperation between governments, and European return orders. After years of criticizing Trump for advocating border control, deportation, and sovereignty, Europe itself has started to copy the part of the logic it once called radical. This migration shift is not happening by chance. Since the major migration crisis of 2015-2016, European governments have been dealing with social pressure, overloaded borders, the rise of tough-on-immigration parties, and unrest among part of the population. Against elites who spoke of welcoming migrants without considering the impact on security, housing, employment, and national identity. Trump warned for years that a weak border changes a nation from within. Now the European Union is trying to regain control when the problem has already become a central issue in elections, on the streets, and in parliaments. In both cases, the message is sovereignty. A government that doesn't protect its border also tends to outsource security. An elite that believes every problem can be solved with a European Union meeting also takes a long time to understand that armed opponents, cartels, hostile regimes, and illegal flows don't obey pretty speeches. Hegseth brought this reality check to NATO. The European Union brought this reality check to its migration policy. And Trump appears in the middle of this as the leader who forced the debate before it became fashionable to treat it as urgent. Oil reinforced the same line. After the agreement between the United States and Iran, the price of the American barrel dropped to around $74, while Brent stayed close to $78. The market reacted to the expectation of a gradual reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and an improvement in the energy flow. The Dow Jones also rose amid optimism about the agreement. The index was moving toward nearly 52,000 points after a recent record, as investors reacted to the reduced risk in the Middle East. This part is important because it shows that Trump's foreign policy was not limited to the military field. It affected the market, oil, investor confidence, and inflation expectations. The White House wants to turn strength into economic stability. Hegseth pressures NATO, Trump puts pressure on Iran, oil prices fall, and Wall Street breathes a sigh of relief. The reaction of European figures reveals their discomfort. In Germany, defense officials expressed concern about any withdrawal of American capabilities that is too quick because Europe knows it still does not replace the United States in decisive areas. This is the contradiction exposed by Hegseth. Many European leaders talk about strategic autonomy, but when Washington talks about reducing its presence, it raises a red flag. The comparison with other regions helps to understand the extent of the pressure. Israel has learned that sovereignty requires constant readiness, technology, intelligence, and quick political decision-making. Nations in Eastern Europe that are closer to the Russian threat also understand better that defense cannot be treated as a luxury. Meanwhile, part of Western Europe spent years passing the bill along while criticizing American policy and relying on the American umbrella. Hegseth exposed this hypocrisy publicly. I am Milson Alves, an internationalist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.